Here's the two things I would do to absolutely speed up your trajectory, career and farming wise, by a decade or two. And I'll give you some examples. Number one, figure out what you're going to do to make money. Take all your dreams, all your plans, all your gifts, pare it down to one or two things and get laser focused about that. The second thing is with your livestock or your farming or whatever your business is, take the two or three things where you're making the most money and get laser focused about attacking those things. And again, taking some of your dreams, some of your hobbies, setting those to the side or putting those in the proper place, and you can literally cut decades off. So here's some examples. And as I'm winding down my TikTok career, frankly, because I'm getting too busy, right? I've been following my own advice, and over the last 4 or 5 years, I've actually built something that's not allowing me a lot of extra time. So I'll go back 20 years, and when I started in the cattle business, you know, I loved purebred cattle, and I wanted to be an auctioneer, and I had a real estate development, and I had all these great ideas going 1,000 directions. And I let the real estate development hang around my neck like a stone. And so, you know, I started in 06, and my credit and everything got destroyed in 08. And I should have been very honest about that and said, okay, until my credit gets straightened out and until my finances get straightened out, there's nothing I could do with this. But I drug it around like a suitcase full of rocks for the next 12 or 13 years. You know, I'd say, oh, well, I got this when this real estate development's done, when this real estate development's done. And I drug that around like I said, like a suitcase full of rocks. And I should have just been willing to say, you know what? That gets put on hold for 15 years until I fix these other things. And something else I did, I really enjoyed being an auctioneer, and I wanted to make, you know, I wanted to be an auctioneer. So I turned down some good jobs because they would interfere with my charity auction business, which was 7 or 8 weekends a year. And I let those two things control me. And so an easy way to do this is sit down with a pencil and paper and have 3 boxes. One is, you know, what you want to do, the things you would do if money wasn't a problem. You know, if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you do? Okay, write those things down. Then write down things you're gifted at, right? Write those 3 or 4 things down, and then write down things that you're actually getting paid for. And so for me, I love being an auctioneer. I wasn't that gifted at it. I wanted to get my real estate development done, but I didn't have the money, I didn't have the credit. And so where I was making money was on certain kinds of cattle and just working, right? So if you're starting with nothing, or you've got a long ways to go find a job that fulfills some of your skills and that allows you to make good money, and have a job you enjoy enough that you will go for promotions, you will get more money, and then you can take that money and put that out into your, cattle operation. The second thing is get laser focused about your competitive advantages. So I had it in my head, if I could just get to 100 head of cattle. So I'm just buying cheap cattle. And looking back, I was making my money on locker beef, even though it was only 4 or 5 head. And then I was robbing, so I'd be hanging up cattle that weighed 550 pounds, hanging. Looking back, if I would have got laser focused and bought 4 or 5 good locker animals, got them to $800 or 800 pounds hanging, that would have been an extra $1,000 per head. That would have helped. And then another thing I had was, the ranch sorting. I should have just got that down to 10 or 12 good young cattle and forgot the rest, done a good job with those. If I would have got a job right away and got laser focused and then only bought cattle that fulfilled those obligations and built from there, I really feel I would have shaved 8 years, 9 years off of everything that I've done. And so like my real estate development, it took a flood in 2021 to slap the shit out of me and say, you know, this isn't going to happen. Find some other way, leverage that deal, you know. So we sold some development rights. And then also around the same time, I sat down with a list and said, where am I making money with cattle? And again, it was locker beef, it was feeder steers. And then the third thing I was doing at that time, every spring I would buy a doctor, vet, and haul pasture cattle for people. So every spring I was selling 30, 35, 40 head, and I'd have to go buy them at the sale barn. And I'm like, this is idiotic. You know, so if I could buy light cattle in the fall and already know that, you know, 5 months hence, you know, Gary was going to want some Herefords and Ian was going to want number ones, and, you know, Alvin was going to want 5 head of bigger 1,000-pound stuff that he could butcher, and to start putting those cattle on purchase, buying those cattle on purpose with a purpose. And so if you've got, you know, some hobby cattle, maybe you're in love with Red Angus or Speckled Park or Guernseys, whatever, pick your pet and then go after what fulfills your competitive advantages. You know, if you're putting up number one feed, you need to be feeding stockers or you need to be feeding dairy cows. You know, if you've got a lot of land, you need to be, you know, putting mama cows out there. You know, if you're putting up number one round bales, you need to have the proper amount of cattle that'll just, you know, eat those round bales, turn those into the most valuable meat you can do. You know, the right cattle at the right time into the right market. So there you go. Like I said, I'm slowing down my TikTok just because, you know, my operation has grown and it's taken up more and more of my time. And I am thinking, what can I do to help people? You know, what are the 2 or 3 things that would have cut a decade off my journey? And those would be it. I should have gotten a job back in 2008 that I enjoyed and that paid me well and that I could, you know, do my 401k and take money out of that and get promotions. And then I should have gone right down and got laser focused about the cattle that fulfilled my competitive advantages. So if you made it this far, I hope this helps you out. God bless you, and thanks for liking, sharing, and following over the years.